You're watching The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the God. We are The Breakfast Club. We have a special guest in the building. Goes by the name of Kierna Mayo. Kierna Mayo. Good morning.
Mayo, not Mano.
I said Mayo.
No, you said Mano, didn't he?
I said
He
Mayo.
Mayo, and then he said Mano.
Oh, Mayo.
Shout out to Mano, though, too.
It's out the Mayo.
We're all from Brooklyn.
And shout out to Kierna Mayo. Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
All right, well, Kierna, I've known Kierna just by name for a long time because she actually started Honey Magazine. I don't know if you guys remember
I remember Honey Magazine.
from back in the
Definitely
day.
remember Honey Magazine.
But that was like a great magazine for the women.
It was.
What happened to it? It was short-lived,
Oh,
right?
gosh. I mean, different place and time. A whole nother universe away. There were a group of girls called Honey Girl. First of all, I started my career at the Source. I was one of the first women there, so hip-hop and women, and I was just creating spaces. So that's what Honey was. And it had its run. There's a long history behind it. And all the stands today who are still holding it together just know that history. But it's almost not even worth revisiting. It's just about the fact that I was tapped into something. And I think that's what I'm trying to build off of today. That's
All
why
right.
I'm here.
We're getting some Kierna Mayo history just so you can see how long she's been in the game, just from going to the Source to starting. You started Honey Magazine.
I did. I
Right.
started Honey Magazine. And again, it was 1998. We shopped the magazine for many years. I was at the Source in the very early years, in the early 90s. And so this was a time when feminism, black feminism, was in a very different place. It didn't have the stage that social media has given it. So it wasn't centered in the way that it is today. And you couldn't handpick the stars, quote unquote, of black feminism.
I was working for the Source because people said the Source was rough back then.
Oh, yeah, kind of. I mean, hip hop was a different thing back then. So it was a lot more urgent in the sense that you had to connect with your subjects in a very real way. We didn't have any distance between us. We lived it, we were it, we were all one thing. So it was hard to, I don't know. What I see today wasn't yesterday. We just had a more connectedness because the culture felt smaller and there were fewer of us that were real players at that time, especially women. I mean, for sure.
You said.
Just,
I'm sorry.
No.
You said you couldn't handpick the stars of black feminism.
Yeah, I mean, in the sense today there are celebrated writers, there are celebrated thinkers, there are celebrated academics. All of these women existed throughout time in terms of black feminism, but the way it has become centered again, the way it's almost become a trend, and it's a positive trend. But I see it as a positive trend or not, whatever brings it to your plate, all good. But I'm just saying this was a different time when, particularly for young women in hip hop, we're all 20 something. We just didn't have the same kinds of access to people who we could look up to and recognize ourselves in them. So we felt like the first of a kind, if you will. And then the women who were writing about men, about hip hop, about this, by, for, and about male culture, even though we were all up in it, styling it, living it, buying the music, we just had our own kind of code. And that spun itself into something which eventually became Honey, which you could really follow Honey all the way to Hello Beautiful Today, which is one of the sites that we have at I1 Digital. Exactly. So I just kind of represent the continuum. That's all. And Cassius today, I'm so excited about it.
All right, now let's get into how we got to where you are now.
Yep.
Okay, so you also were at Ebony Magazine as well as editor-in-chief.
I was editor-in-chief about 2 years ago. Before that, I was on the digital side for a few years as a VP.
Okay.
And I had done, so between Honey, right, and Ebony, many, many years, several lifetimes lived. Different publications, some of them mainstream, a lot of them not. But by the time I land at Ebony as editor-in-chief about 2 years ago, I really understood that the visual medium was so central. The internet is here now, so where it wasn't during my Honey days. And what I had found that print publications really weren't taking advantage of was how visceral things needed to be. It was a different medium. The way people spoke, the way headlines read, all of those things had changed. So what I tried to do with my version of Ebony, this is before the drama, the recent Ebony drama that's just kind of jumped off,
When they put Rachel Dolezal on the cover?
No. What happened with Ebony was they aren't paying some of their writers. Apparently, haven't been paid.
You're right.
For quite some time.
I recuse myself from that entire space. No, but that Ebony to me was my opportunity to show that covers sing. We had some amazing covers that really attracted a millennial audience, and here was this 70-year-old brand that hadn't brought anyone along for a long time. So again, this all kind of just feeds into where I am today, because those covers back then were on fire online. So I feel like we were doing more. We had more controversy and conversation happening in social spaces than was even happening on a newsstand.
Yeah, that
told
was an
me
issue with a lot of written publications, is that sometimes they didn't really keep up with what was going on.
They didn't translate the medium.
You think it was they had too many people that were older working there, or people that weren't of the culture? Or?
It's. I mean, we can't even unpack it in this amount of time. Many factors. But I think part of it is just, it's hard for an older brand to really insert itself in culture today, right? Culture is a whole nother game, and if you don't understand it, the way it moves, the rhythm, the players, it's really hard to find your space.
If you don't evolve with it.
And if you don't evolve with it. And that's what I think we were doing, and that's how I think I got this opportunity to show what I'm worth and how I'm seeing culture today, because of those little breadcrumbs along the way that show that through culture you must evolve.
So you would say you had a lot of foresight into knowing what was going to happen next.
I
because
think so.
Honey probably was ahead of its time.
Oh, for sure.
At that time.
For sure.
Right, because I still feel like we kind of don't really. Hello Beautiful is great, because I was just up at the office
yes,
the other
you were.
day. And I love Hello Beautiful, and I check it all the time.
Good.
But at that time, Honey Magazine was a big deal. I remember I was at the launch party when they
You
launched.
were?
Yeah, the magazine.
That was a big deal.
It
That
was.
party.
It was like the
kinda
biggest
changed my
deal
life.
for women.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we love that. And then even like you said, the Source, at the time that you worked at the Source, that was such a male-dominated
Absolutely. I mean, it's hard
publication.
for folks to really grasp it, and I hate that I always sound like auntie, like double auntie. But it was just so different because there was no social media, there was no internet. So we were stars at the Source in part because there weren't many other voices. This even predates Vibe, my Source years.
Right.
So I was there when the Vibe conversation was beginning.
That's real though, because I knew their names. Like I knew
Yeah.
Kierna Mayo, I knew
Yeah.
Kim Osario.
And Kim is a couple generations after me. You know,
Right.
Dream Hampton.
Dream Hampton,
Right.
yep,
That's we're a generation.
Yep.
With
The
David
journalists
Mays,
were
all
like
of them.
stars as
Yeah,
well.
exactly. So the journalists
Danielle
had
Smith Elliott's
Danielle,
wife.
of course,
as
Danielle,
well. Mhm.
and then later Elliott,
Mhm.
himself. So we're all part of one like trajectory of hip hop journalism, and you can see us all now in culture. Those of us that had that foresight, that understood how to evolve with things, we still have a seat at the table.
Right.
You know.
Okay. All right. So now, Interactive One. Now that you are now heading up the, explain what your job is there
All right.
at Interactive One.
All right. People stumble on that. I'll explain. It's no longer Interactive One because we evolved. We are I1 Digital.
I1 Digital.
And it is a really amazing place to be right now. You're looking at maybe the only digital media content hub that is Black owned and operated, where you look across a newsroom, literally, and you see all these Black and brown and white faces, but you get the sense that there's an authentic kind of thing baked in, whereas what we're responding to at I1 Digital now with this new project Cassius is what we feel is happening in culture too much, which is that everyone else is able to kind of replicate and sell and package what they think is Black, brown culture.
Yep.
And win with it. They are selling it. They're not trying to do it. They're doing it. And sometimes they mess it up. Sometimes they're big brands and they try to give you a cup of soda in the middle of a protest. Sometimes things happen. So Cassius is here to kind of reverse that and take the culture back.
So Cassius is a new platform on I1 Digital.
Yes.
You guys also do have Hello Beautiful.
We do.
You bought Bossip.
We did. And so wait, let me come back to
That's
Cassius.
Urban Daily?
No, so the Urban Daily is now CassiusLife.com.
Okay.
And so this is a platform that is definitely going to speak to everyone in this room, all of your listeners, all the time, because we understand culture. We're talking to men and women. We are really political, smart, and most importantly, unapologetic. That's the whole tagline, that we're born unapologetic. So people are like, well, what will you be covering? And I say lifestyle. And they say, what does that mean? And I'm saying food and sex and music and sneakers. But it's not even those specific things. It's that the way we do it. It's how we do it. It's how specific we are in our level of understanding of a thing, even in how we deal with our writers, because we know our culture. We know when to code switch. We understand language. There are things that we're injecting into this project that you haven't seen on the digital landscape in a really long time, including covers. Coming back to my history, we're doing digital covers every month. So we just dropped one, and you have to check it.
Who is it?
It's featuring, who is it? It's 30 Unapologetics. That's what we're calling them.
Mm-hmm.
This tribe of us who kind of can't help but do us. This tribe of us who recognize that we must kind of speak truth to power. It really does matter. And it doesn't mean that it's not fun. It doesn't mean that it's not, that we're not snarky, that we don't laugh at ourselves and at each other. We really do at the world. But we are different in that we are raising the bar in terms of our quality.
Mm-hmm.
We are entering the space on a higher level in terms of quality. And I think that needs to be said. Because if you're somebody who takes in a lot of digital content, you know there's a lot of BS out there.
Right. So it's real journalism.
So it's real journalism. It's real thinking. It's real thought leaders. It's real influencers, and it's real pretty. So you'll check out this cover, and you'll get into the conversation. Listen, we talked about who these 30 folks would be. It's basically we flipped the Last Supper, and we're calling it the First Supper. And we did this before we saw Kendrick's Humble. We were on this way before, and it's a really amazing piece of art. It features, like I said, 30 people living and dead, all of whom we believe are unapologetic at their core.
Like somebody like a Kanye West.
Somebody like you guessed good, like a Kanye West, but also like a Harriet Tubman.
Mm-hmm.
So and drawing the line between the two. Mm-hmm. And also like a Willow Smith, and then drawing the line between the two again. So it's like understanding that everybody's version of being unapologetic, sitting here with Charlamagne the God, represents itself in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to make a space for all of that, because we're not going to have everybody else cash in on that, and we just play the back.
Now let me ask you something, because this was a conversation we had in the room earlier. I don't know if you saw, did you see Boosie and what he had to say about being in jail and how he was horrified when he walked in on two men having sex?
I heard you guys riffing a little bit earlier today. Fill me in a little more, because it gives me, every time I hear things like that.
How you just gonna ask her that?
I mean,
what's that got to do with anything?
No, because we're talking about the culture. We're talking about what's going on.
Yeah, and I know you ladies touched on a little bit of.
Go ahead, tell her.
All right, I'm just going to keep it.
I want to play it for her
I know,
uncensored so she can hear.
Let me hear it uncensored, but I already know how I feel. Real talk.
But people are giving him a really hard time, because as a journalist and as somebody who has reported on this culture for as long as you have, some people are saying, okay, this is a scared straight thing, and we should understand that Boosie's not used to seeing this, and some people are saying he's homophobic.
Well, I think it's both. I think it's both and.
Okay, here we go.
I think it's both and.
I remember I was in Angola, I walked down on a nigga riding a nigga dick from the back. That nigga had a nigga ankles riding that bitch from the back, man. I ain't know about the coke can in the shower, you heard me? Nigga ain't even tell me. I walked straight in, 6 in the morning. Nigga riding that dick. I say, man, I won't go home, man.
Miss Mayo, I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to see where this question goes.
No.
You can stop it now. So
this is...
Go with your question.
Yes, no, this is... And I'm sure there's a lot more. Who needs more? So this is why Cassius is here. We are unapologetic, and we're not afraid of this. You don't have to apologize for even putting me in this space. I think that we have a long way to go in our community in terms of how we deem, what we perceive homosexual, quote-unquote, lifestyle to be, right? So this is a young person who steps into a situation, if we are to believe what he's saying, first of all. If that's really something that happened to him and it happened in that way, that would be jarring for anyone to walk up on any two people having sex anywhere, right? We need to say that. This is not just about the fact that he saw two men having sex. He ran into two people having sex. But we have so far to go in terms of our conversation. We should be able to have this conversation without being stupid about it. Mm-hmm. We should be able to ask ourselves, is this just about his homophobia? Or is this about something more or less, like him just running into a situation that was uncomfortable? I think until we can talk about these things and until, we respect all Black lives. Real talk. We can't talk about any one of us if we're not going to talk about all of us. And I just do feel that we've come way too far as a culture to think that we can afford to leave anyone behind. So if something like this ultimately makes somebody who is gay day bad, that's too bad. That's unfortunate. I wish that it didn't have to happen. But do I think that somebody who experiences something shouldn't be able to speak to that experience? No. Right. If you experience something that you felt was traumatic and you're just speaking about what you saw, okay. But to me, his language seemed like he was leaning toward giving this, like assigning this some kind of negative behavior because the ankles and like the description just seems to me like he wanted to get off into.
Oh no, he did.
Clearly.
Yeah, he did later
and
on.
I mean, and so I'm like, but what's the win there? That's all I'm saying.
I think with phobia,
what's the win?
We got to start, even when we talk about phobia, we got to stop thinking phobia is a prejudice a lot of times.
It's just an ignorance.
Yeah, people fear what they don't understand.
They don't know, and what they haven't been exposed to themselves. But all of us know gay people. All of us do. You could either own that or not. You could pretend that it's not real. I mean, they've always been. This is not a new thing. This is not millennial. You know what I mean? Right. Like gay people have been around.
Right.
And so we just got to get there. It's like, it's kind of corny. This sounds like, I feel like we're having a conversation that we'd have had at the source in 92. Like, we can't be doing that. We just have to
progress.
Evolve.
I want to talk about culture vultures. Like, we always talk about culture vultures. What culture vultures are we against? Which ones are we attacking? I mean, because if a white kid does a rap, a lot of people say, oh, he's a culture vulture.
Yeah,
so what culture vultures are we going against?
I don't know if it's about specific culture vultures. So you saw the first cover of Cassius, which was our very dope cover called Death to Culture Vultures.
Right.
And we just wanted to come hard right off the top. And it's CassiusLife.com if I haven't made that clear. So it's more of a statement about this idea that culture is so easily transferable that you don't have to pay any dues. You don't have to respect any history. You don't have to understand the spirit of which something comes from, but you could just ride off of it and benefit. That's really what we were saying. I mean, obviously you could handpick your culture vultures, and there's some lower hanging fruit. Some of the white ones, some of the white female rappers, there's some of those that we could name, but I don't even know if for me, at my stage of life, at where I am in terms of my career, if it's a benefit to just go around name checking culture vultures as much as it is for me to create a lane for young people to have the conversation about how important it is to be able to identify when your culture, something you built, something you own,
but I feel like everything that's out is a culture vulture, and the reason I say that is we don't own anything. The NBA, 90% of the NBA players are African American?
I think that's two different conversations.
But no matter what we do in our culture, whether it's hip hop, whether it's record labels, whether it's not, we don't own nothing.
Well, even ownership is nuanced. I mean, we could talk about actual ownership in terms of who is cashing in, who is actually getting. But also, there is cultural ownership, and that's real.
Well,
that's
we just
language,
saw recently with Gucci.
Precisely.
We saw that whole
perfect
entire
example.
situation.
That's a perfect example. And even though you're going to see Dapper Dan and Gucci get together and get your money, Dapper Dan. But the point remains.
Gucci put out a design
of
something, and it was a clear ripoff of something that Dapper Dan had did.
Yeah.
But you know
what?
Decades ago.
Louis?
It was Gucci.
It was
it was Louis.
It was Dan's piece was the
Louis
piece.
Vuitton, right? Yeah.
But
Gucci redid it.
Gucci reinterpreted it.
So then
and now
Gucci
we're
actually shouted out Dapper Dan after people called them out on it, and now maybe.
But I mean, it's this. So back in my day, so when I remember when Sex and the City came out, and all the white girls had their nameplates, and we were just
they acted like it was a new thing.
They just invented
You're like, we've been
nameplates.
doing this forever.
They invented everything that happened in the 90s was a white creation. It was just, aha. They had all these aha moments.
Even recently, the Timberlands.
Exactly.
So who was it that had on Timberlands?
It's so
and they were like,
weird.
oh, she's bringing Timberlands back.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I was like,
I can argue that black culture vultures ruin the game more than white culture vultures.
And so what do black culture vultures look like?
I'm going to tell you why. Black culture vultures are the guys who grew up in the 90s and early 2000s who portrayed the street image when that wasn't really them at all. They started cashing in on the glorification of the drug culture, the glorification of the gang culture, just to make money, just to make profit. They was rapping about killing. They was rapping about violence. They was doing all that stuff, and they was not even remotely living that life. Chris Rock even made a movie about it called CB4.
Yeah.
I think those guys ruined the game way more than the white culture vultures.
I think that's less culture vulturism. That's not somebody from outside of a culture kind of stepping into a culture. That's more you just kind of
storytelling.
Exactly. You're just reinventing
No, that's cultural
yourself.
appropriation. If you're from
You're
the suburbs,
reinventing yourself.
if you're from the suburbs and you never grew up in the street and you go adopt
And
a
I
street
think-
lifestyle, that's cultural
But
appropriation.
still, let's talk about power. Where does power rest? So these guys, sure. I mean, there's always been these like studio gangsters for time immemorial, and now they're Instagram gangsters. But I think that your point is like further away from what the center truth is.
Sometimes
which
they
is
really
that
know people
there
who
are
did that and they-
outsiders. Yeah, and they're not
Those
always
guys
right.
like
It's not
Macklemore,
just-
Iggy, they suck. They don't. I mean, they don't even last. Like
and
they don't-
sometimes it's not okay. So Macklemore, Iggy. I mean, I could argue that they suck for different reasons, the two of them, and may or may not last. Who knows? But in this conversation, we should just let your audience think deeper about the whys and the hows, and they should sharpen their pencils so that they can identify when it's happening in their world. It's not always a grand stage. It's not always an Iggy Azalea. You know what I'm saying? Like, to understand, we don't even have to call it culture vulturism. We could just say, are you woke enough to recognize exploitation? Are you woke enough to recognize when you're being complicit in your own exploitation? And we want CassiusLife.com to be a place where this conversation is had all the time, in and out. And like I said, this is a serious talk that we're having now, but we laugh about it on the site. We poke fun at ourselves, and we poke fun at the culture. Some of it is just.
Do you think people get too sensitive about things sometimes?
Sometimes.
Like online, something happens, and all of a sudden everybody's up in arms.
Well, I think now we have the woke police, and I think now we're so ready to throw everybody out,
Yes,
and all
man.
babies get thrown out with all bathwater all the time. And I always warn my team against this. It's a danger. We all f up,
Right.
we do, and we all deserve to have an opportunity to come, like, speak your piece, state your claim, and try to make sense of your mess up. I've done it. Listen, it happens. And I hate that part of the culture where it's just like attack mode.
Like
because
Shea
I
Moisture.
agree.
That's what.
Shea Moisture recently.
That's interesting.
Yeah, what was your take on that? People were very upset about the ad they did where they didn't
They should have
include
been attacked, though.
who was their core audience, and people were saying, we're not boycott Shea Moisture.
Yeah, I mean-
They
but
should have been
Shea
checked.
Moisture has done a lot of great things.
checked,
They
not,
should've been
checked.
not boycotted
No,
and
they
try to ruin
Exactly.
the
Community.
business.
And
They should've
there
been
it
checked.
is. There it is. If we don't get to some of the nuance of how things are, things are
Yes.
not just so one note. It's not always black or white. Yes, that was a bad look. Yes, that was a bad move. Yes, it made black women, particularly their long-term supporters, feel bad. Simply, it was emotional. But has Shea Moisture stood up for the community?
Absolutely.
For a very long time.
They have.
Are they a black-owned entity in a space? And I can tell you about the beauty business. It is not a game. Are they doing their part? Absolutely. So yes, they messed up. They deserve to have to apologize,
Which
to
they did.
recognize, which they did. All those things. And it's for consumers to determine individually how offended they really are.
Right.
But you really should be looking at the big picture. If you're going to boycott Shea Moisture and not boycott some of the soda folks and some of the other, that,
You
like
still
think
thinking-
about
yeah.
think about where your
Absolutely.
politics really lie. So I personally give Shea Moisture a pass. They've been a supporter of black women. They've been a supporter of Cassius. They are.
They should have been
to
checked.
me-
They was,
Yes,
and
they
they
were, and they
apologized,
did.
and
It's probably not over,
that's
but in some respects, this is what conversation is about.
Absolutely.
But it's just not about just attack mode.
Right.
Throw them away.
Can we ever get back to that though? Because it seems like nobody wants to be objective, like you said. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to deal with the
Yeah.
nuance. It's either all or nothing, which I think is a detriment to the game.
Well, look at our presidency. I mean, look at where we are. It's almost, we almost can't fault young folks. We almost can't fault individual communities if we look at who we've lifted up as national leadership, truthfully international leadership, if you think about what the United States represents to the rest of the world. It's a failed model, and it's a effed up thing to have to emulate. But I think that's what happens if you think about how lowbrow the president is most of the time. If you think about how the juggler, like how he throws the baby out with the bathwater, how he's so willing to do away with something that has potential good. Let's take Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and throw it away. So 23 million people now are no longer going to be insured because Obama's a Muslim from wherever like it's so insane. But I worry, as a parent. I have young kids. I worry. I worry for myself, but I think our spirit of resilience as a community, as folks who are tied together by culture, not just race, not just class, but really culture, that we can see our way through. We know better than this. We understand, really how to take sensitive times and turn them into, we can make lemonade out of lemons. We can take Beyonce's model as opposed to Trump's. And it happens all the time. So I choose to look for that. But yes, I get very down sometimes when I see what's happening. And I do ask myself, how do we turn this around? I'm hoping that what we're doing with this project is part of the solution.
With Cassius?
With Cassius. And, at CassiusLife.com, we spend a lot of time really trying to recenter the conversation to things that we think are important and to do away with all of the trash. It's about doing less for more and not more for more. The internet is just filled with trash. It's filled with lowbrow, unintentional stuff. We just want to be unapologetic, but intentional. It wasn't an accident. Everything you saw, we meant for you to see. Everything we said, we meant to say. And I think that in and of itself creates a space for something good. One little ripple effect creates the next.
I would like to, I just like to see more objectivity, like like right now with the whole Bill Maher situation. Yes, he should be checked for saying that wholeheartedly. I don't know if he should be fired, but I would love to see somebody do a think piece that shows the different times he stood up for Black people.
I mean, I think right, and so I think again that word nuance comes up again and again, more and more, and as it should. Bill Maher is complicated,
as we all are.
Has this national stage that he's had for many years, and has kind of positioned himself as an authority on liberal culture and the liberal perspective. But the problem with white liberals, and we see this time and time again so often, is that they take liberties. Again, this is vulturism in a way. In fact, that's a perfect example. So we don't even have to use Iggy. We could just talk about how Bill Maher felt empowered enough to use the term house N-word in reference to himself even. So if we want to debate amongst ourselves the value of this word, the lack of value of the word, the problems with the word, how the word is empowered, whatever, we can have that conversation. But how dare a Bill Maher or anyone else, just because of your historical perspective, typically being on the quote-unquote right side of things. I mean, because I would
dating some Black women.
Dating a few Black women and aligning yourself with Black cool. How dare you think, though, that gives you the ability.
Don't get that comfortable.
Like, just
right.
don't.
Yeah, don't get that comfortable.
Respect.
Like, just don't. And that's what I mean. So my piece with the vultures just has to do with respect. It has to do with recognition. Because if you recognize how ill that was, a Bill Maher should, of all folks, and to your point, everything Bill Maher has done has not been bad.
Right.
Everything Bill Maher has said has not been bad. In fact, there are many things that Bill Maher has said that I have been yelling at my TV. Yes, Bill Maher.
Yeah, Bill Maher said Black people should give reparations. Bill Maher got on the on television after the Dallas shooting and said he doesn't condone it, but he understands that you can't keep pushing a community and expect them not to retaliate.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has relationships with actual Black people.
Ice Cube is going on, and I'm very interested to hear the conversation that Ice Cube is going to have with Bill Maher.
And Simone Sanders is going to be on.
Simone
and
is
Michael Eric Dyson.
Simone is part of our cover conversation. We do this thing on CassiusLife.com called Groupthink. So every month, the team brings in some guests, and we sit around and just kick it like this about our cover subject. So Simone's one of those folks. Shout out to Simone Sanders.
And she was booked before the House Nigga comments, by the way.
Oh, and she absolutely.
Because if you watch Bill Maher, you saw her and Ice Cube's name in the credits last week.
Yeah.
They added Michael Eric Dyson this week, though.
Yeah. And I mean, that's going to be a rich conversation.
Absolutely.
That's going to be an important conversation.
And that's because Al Franken's not going, right? The senator was booked and he canceled.
Oh, did he? Because he was so offended.
Okay.
Well, we appreciate you for joining us.
Wonderful. What's Jamela Lemieux doing on it in Blogzilla?
We're all family. That's CassiusLife.com.
Listen, I went up to that office, and
Jamila, I heard her on your show.
You will feel very comfortable in the office over there for Cassius, because you will know every single person there from having been in this industry
Dope.
and having been movers and shakers for quite some time. So very comfortable.
Thank y'all for having me.
Thanks
Everybody
for
check out Cassius, CassiusLife.com.
The Breakfast Club. Every weekday morning. Tune in.